The metallic taste of recycled air mixed with fear still lingers in my mouth when I think about that first day. My name is Marcus Chen, former Systems Alliance tactical analyst, and I've spent the last decade studying what happens when civilizations collide. The brass thought they were sending me to analyze theoretical warfare scenarios. They had no idea I was about to witness the systematic dismantling of everything we thought we knew about survival. You think our expansion across the solar system makes us tough. You think surviving the Canterbury incident, the Free Navy rebellion, and the ring entities prepared us for anything the universe could throw at us. You don't know what real horror looks like. You haven't seen what happens when a species that conquered death itself decides your existence is an inconvenience. I was there when the first Adeptus Astartes strike force emerged from what we thought was just another ringgate. I watched our best ships, the Rocinante-class destroyers, our pride and joy, get torn apart like paper toys by weapons that shouldn't exist. This isn't speculation anymore. This is testimony from the other side of annihilation, and you need to hear what humanity from the Expanse really faces in the grim darkness of the 41st millennium. Chapter 1. The Solar System. We know the morning shift on Ceres Station began like any other in the year 2387. Captain Elena Vasquez finished her coffee, real coffee, not the synthetic stuff they served on the Outer Rim stations, and reviewed the overnight reports from the Traffic Control Center. 347 ships had passed through Ceres space in the last 24 hours, ice haulers from the Belt, passenger liners from Ganymede, and the occasional military patrol keeping the shipping lanes clear. This was humanity at its peak. We had conquered the solar system through grit, innovation, and a stubborn refusal to accept limitations. The Canterbury disaster was ancient history now, a cautionary tale told to new spacers about the dangers of corporate greed and alien interference. The Free Navy rebellion had been crushed, Winston Duarte's Laconian empire had fallen, and the ring entities, those godlike beings that had created the Gate Network, had finally gone silent after their last violent tantrum 30 years ago. Elena's fingers danced across her workstation's haptic interface, checking fuel depot levels, scheduling maintenance rotations, and coordinating with the Transportation Authority on Ganymede. The mathematical precision of it all still amazed her sometimes. Every ship, every cargo manifest, every orbital trajectory calculated to the microsecond. This was what separated humanity from the chaos of the universe. Our ability to impose order through technology and determination. The comm system crackled to life with the familiar voice of her shift supervisor, Detective Joe Miller. No relation to the infamous Miller who died on Eros, but he'd inherited the name along with the attitude. Elena, we've got something weird on the long-range sensors. New contact coming through Ringgate 1373. Transponder signature doesn't match anything in our database. Elena pulled up the tactical display, her augmented reality contacts overlaying ship specifications and trajectory data directly onto her field of vision. The contact was massive, easily 3 times the size of a Donegal-class battleship, and its energy signature was unlike anything in their catalogues. The hull design looked almost organic, covered in Gothic spires and what appeared to be weapon batteries that belonged in a historical museum, rather than a modern warship. Probability assessment? Eleanor asked, though she already suspected the answer wouldn't be good. Computer's giving me a 73% chance this is first contact scenario, Miller replied. Ship design suggests technological development along completely different evolutionary paths. Material science indicates construction methods unknown to current human engineering. Elena felt the familiar weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders. As senior duty officer, first contact protocol fell under her jurisdiction. She'd trained for this scenario hundreds of times in simulation, but those exercises had always assumed they'd be dealing with something recognizable. Ships that followed basic physics, beings that might share some common ground with human experience. The massive vessel emerging from Ringgate 1373 looked like someone had taken a cathedral and strapped engines to it. Weapon signatures were off the charts, but they seemed to use energy patterns that their sensors could barely interpret. Most disturbing of all, the ship appeared to be made primarily of some kind of organic metal. that their materials databases couldn't classify. "Send the standard greeting package," Elena ordered, pulling up the diplomatic protocols that had been refined over centuries of human expansion. "All languages, mathematical constants, peaceful intentions, request for dialogue, and get me a direct line to Fleet Command on Luna. If this goes south, they need to know about it." The response came back in less than 30 seconds, far too fast for any normal translation process. The alien vessel transmitted a burst of data that somehow interfaced directly with Ceres Station's computer systems, despite being protected by quantum encryption barriers that should have been impenetrable. When Eleanor's workstation screen flickered back to life, it displayed a message in perfect archaic English. "In the name of the God Emperor of mankind, you will submit to Imperial authority. Resistance is heresy. Compliance is mandatory. You have 60 seconds to acknowledge Imperial sovereignty before purification protocols commence." Elena stared at the message, her mind struggling to process the implications. These weren't aliens at all. They claimed to be human, but humans who spoke of gods and emperors and purification protocols in the same breath. Humans who apparently had technology that could hack their most secure systems in seconds. "Miller, are you seeing this?" she asked, forwarding the communication to her supervisor's station. "Yeah, and I don't like it one bit," Miller responded. "Whoever they are, they've got capabilities that put them about 1,000 years ahead of us technologically. But Elena, look at that ship design again. Does that look like the work of a peaceful civilization to you?" She enhanced the tactical display, focusing on the vessel's weapon configurations. What she saw made her blood run cold. This wasn't a ship designed for exploration or even conventional warfare. It was a tool of extermination. Every surface bristled with weapons systems, and the energy readings suggested they could level entire cities with a single broadside. The 60-second countdown was already at 45 seconds. "Get me Admiral Singh at Fleet Command," Elena ordered. "Emergency priority, and start evacuation protocols for non-essential personnel. If these people are what I think they are, Ceres Station is about to become a very dangerous place to be." The communication system connected her directly to Admiral Chandra Singh, the commanding officer of the Solar Defense Fleet. Singh was old school, a veteran of the Laconian Wars who had earned her rank through competence rather than politics. "Admiral, we have a first contact situation developing at Ringgate 1373, Elena began, transmitting the tactical data in real time. Unknown vessel claiming human origin, but displaying technology levels far beyond our current capabilities. They're demanding immediate surrender to something called Imperial authority." Singh's weathered face appeared on Elena's display, and she could see the same cold calculation in the Admiral's eyes that had made her legendary during the siege of Medina Station. "Captain Vasquez, I'm looking at your sensor data now. That ship masses approximately 12 million tons and is showing energy outputs consistent with our most advanced fusion reactors. What's their crew complement estimate?" "Computer analysis suggests somewhere between 50 and 100,000 souls aboard that single vessel," Elena replied, knowing how insane that sounded. "Sir, I don't think we're dealing with normal human civilization here. Their technology base appears to have developed along completely different lines from ours." The countdown reached 20 seconds. Admiral Singh was quiet for a moment, studying the tactical displays with the focused intensity that had made her one of the most respected officers in the fleet. When she spoke, her voice carried the weight of 3 centuries of human experience in space. "Captain, I want you to respond to their ultimatum. Tell them that the solar system recognizes no external authority and that any aggressive action will be met with appropriate force. Meanwhile, I'm scrambling the Third Fleet to your position. If these people want a fight, they'll get one." Elena's hands moved across her workstation, composing the response that would either open diplomatic relations with a lost branch of humanity or trigger the first interstellar war in human history. As she transmitted the message, she couldn't shake the feeling that everything they had built, all the careful progress since the ring gates opened, all the treaties and trade agreements and technological advances, was about to come crashing down around them. The response from the massive vessel was immediate and devastating. A single energy beam lanced out from its prow, striking Ceres Station's main communications array with surgical precision. The blast didn't destroy the station, but it sent a clear message. They could have vaporized every soul aboard with casual ease. "Warning acknowledged," came the reply in that same archaic English. "You have been classified as potential Imperial citizens requiring re-education. Prepare for boarding and compliance inspection. Resistance will result in orbital bombardment and population reduction to manageable levels." Elena stared at the message, understanding with crystal clarity that everything had just changed forever. These weren't explorers or diplomats or even conventional conquerors. They were something else entirely. Humans who had evolved beyond anything recognizable as human civilization. As she watched 3 smaller vessels detach from the massive ship and begin their approach to Ceres Station, Elena realized she was about to get a very personal education in what it meant to face the Imperium of Man. And she was beginning to suspect that humanity from the Expanse was about to learn just how unprepared they were for the galaxy that lay beyond their small solar system. The mathematics that had seemed so reassuring just an hour ago, the precise orbital calculations, the carefully managed resource distributions, the elegant efficiency of their technological civilization, all of it was about to prove utterly inadequate against an enemy that measured time in millennia and counted casualties in billions. Chapter 2. When Empires Collide. The Adeptus Astartes strike team that breached Ceres Station's docking bay moved with a coordinated precision that defied everything Elena thought she knew about human limitations. Each warrior stood over 7 feet tall, encased in power armor that hummed with energies her sensors couldn't properly classify. They moved like predators, efficient, deadly, and completely confident in their superiority. Elena watched from the security center as Station Security Chief Rodriguez attempted to establish communication with the boarding party. Rodriguez was a 20-year veteran who had served with distinction during the Free Navy uprising, but he looked like a child next to these armored giants. "This is Chief Rodriguez, Ceres Station Security," he announced through the bay's public address system. "You are in violation of solar system sovereignty. State your intentions or prepare to be escorted off this facility." The lead warrior, distinguished by additional heraldry on his armor that seemed to shift and move in the station's artificial lighting, raised what appeared to be a weapon larger than Rodriguez's entire torso. When he spoke, his voice carried through the station's communication systems with a resonance that seemed to come from the very walls themselves. "I am Sergeant Quintus Aurelius of the Ultramarines 5th Company, servant of the God Emperor of mankind. You will surrender this facility immediately and submit to Imperial compliance screening. Any resistance will be met with lethal force." Rodriguez, to his credit, didn't back down immediately. "I don't know what kind of theatrical production you people are running, but you're trespassing on civilian infrastructure. Stand down your weapons and prepare for questioning." What happened next would be seared into Elena's memory forever. Sergeant Aurelius moved with inhuman speed, covering the 20 meters between himself and Rodriguez in what seemed like a single fluid motion. His gauntleted hand closed around the security chief's throat, lifting him off the ground with casual ease. "You mistake mercy for weakness," Aurelius said, his voice carrying clearly through the communication system. "I could crush your windpipe without effort. Your weapons cannot penetrate my armor. Your knowledge of warfare extends only to conflicts between children playing with toys. You will submit or you will die. There are no other options." Elena's tactical training kicked in automatically, analyzing the situation with the cold precision that had kept her alive through 2 decades of space operations. These warriors weren't just technologically superior, they were physically enhanced beyond normal human limits. The casual way Aurelius held Rodriguez suggested strength levels consistent with industrial machinery rather than biological organisms. "Miller," she whispered into her private communication channel, "get me a connection to Admiral Singh. These aren't normal humans. I think we're dealing with some kind of augmented super soldiers." The response came back immediately from Fleet Command. "Captain Vasquez, Admiral Singh is en route with the 3rd Fleet, but they're still 18 hours out. You need to buy us time while we figure out what we're dealing with. Elena made the hardest decision of her career. Chief Rodriguez, she announced over the general communication system. Stand down. All security personnel, stand down. We're complying with their demands pending arrival of Fleet Command. She could see the relief in Rodriguez's eyes as Sergeant Aurelius released him, but she could also see something else. A recognition that their entire understanding of humanity's place in the universe had just been fundamentally altered. The Ultramarines spread throughout Ceres Station with military precision, establishing control points and conducting what they termed compliance screening of the population. Elena watched through security cameras as they herded civilians into designated areas, scanning them with devices that seemed to probe not just their bodies, but their minds as well. The screening process revealed information that chilled Elena to her core. The Astartes weren't just checking for weapons or contraband. They were evaluating genetic purity, psychic potential, and something they called chaos corruption. When Elena accessed the station's medical database to cross-reference their scans, she discovered that roughly 30% of Ceres Station's population was being classified as mutation positive and marked for what the Imperials euphemistically termed purification. "My God," Miller breathed as they watched the data stream. "They're talking about killing a third of our people because they don't meet some kind of genetic standards. What kind of civilization does that?" Elena was beginning to understand. These weren't just human survivors who had developed different technology. They were the product of a completely different evolutionary path. Where humanity in the solar system had embraced diversity, technological integration, and individual freedom, these Imperials had apparently chosen genetic purity, religious fanaticism, and absolute conformity. The communication from Sergeant Aurelius was delivered with the same matter-of-fact tone he might use to discuss the weather. "Station Commander, your facility contains significant levels of mutation and heretical technology. Standard Imperial procedure requires purification of corrupted elements and re-education of salvageable population. Do you have a preferred method for disposal of genetic deviants?" Elena's response was immediate and instinctive. "There will be no disposal of anyone on this station. These are civilian populations under solar system protection. Your authority is not recognized," Aurelius replied. "Imperial law supersedes local jurisdiction. However, as this appears to be first contact with an isolated human colony, we will delay purification pending arrival of chaplain interrogation specialists. Compliance screening will continue." The next several hours provided Elena with an education in Imperial methodology that she would never forget. The Astartes operated with an efficiency that was both impressive and terrifying, cataloguing every person, every piece of technology, every cultural practice on Ceres Station, according to criteria that seemed designed to eliminate anything that didn't conform to their rigid standards. She watched as they confiscated personal communication devices, declaring them heretical vox theft technology. She saw them destroy religious artifacts from Earth's various faiths, labeling them as chaos corruption vectors. Most disturbing of all, she observed as they separated families based on genetic screening results, marking some members for re-education and others for purification. When Admiral Singh finally established communication from the approaching Third Fleet, Eleanor had a comprehensive picture of what humanity from the Expanse was facing. "Admiral," she reported, "we're not dealing with a conventional military force. These Imperials operate according to a worldview that considers our entire civilization fundamentally corrupt. They see our genetic diversity as mutation, our technological integration as heresy, and our political freedom as chaos. I don't think negotiation is possible." Singh's response came through clearly, despite the 18-hour communication delay. "Captain, I'm looking at tactical analysis of their ship. Our weapons would be effective, but that vessel could level every civilian installation in the solar system before we could stop it. We need to find a way to demonstrate our strength without triggering a massacre." Eleanor understood the impossible position they were in. The Imperials possessed overwhelming technological superiority, but they seemed genuinely surprised to encounter organized human resistance. There was an opportunity here, if she could convince them that humanity from the Expanse wasn't just another primitive colony to be absorbed into their empire. "Sergeant Aurelius," she announced over the station's communication system, "I request formal audience with your commanding officer. As representative of the solar system government, I wish to discuss terms for our integration into your imperial structure." The response took longer than usual, and when it came, there was something different in the Astartes warrior's tone. "Station Commander, your request has been forwarded to Captain Sicarius aboard the battle barge Indomitable. Be aware that false claims of authority are punishable by immediate execution. You will present evidence of your governmental status within the hour." Elena smiled grimly as she began preparing the most important presentation of her life. She had 1 hour to convince the Imperium of Man that humanity from the Expanse was worth preserving as something more than slave labor. The mathematics of the situation were stark. 300 billion human lives in the solar system against an enemy that measured victory in the complete subjugation of entire species. As she compiled data on human achievements, technological capabilities, and military strength, Elena couldn't escape the growing realization that they were about to face a test that would determine not just their survival, but the very nature of what it meant to be human in a universe far more hostile than they had ever imagined. The stakes couldn't be higher, and the enemy couldn't be more dangerous. But if there was one thing 3 centuries of expansion had taught humanity from the Expanse, it was that survival often came down to making the right choice at the critical moment. Elena just hoped she could figure out what that choice was before time ran out. Chapter 3. The True Scope Revealed. The Imperial captain who materialized in Ceres Station's main conference room was nothing like what Elena had expected. Captain Cato Sicarius stood only slightly taller than an average human, but there was something about his presence that made the reinforced chamber feel claustrophobic. His power armor was a masterwork of engineering that seemed to blend technology and artistry in ways that defied her understanding of manufacturing principles. When he spoke, his voice carried the authority of someone accustomed to absolute obedience. "I am Captain Cato Sicarius, 2nd Company, Ultramarines Chapter, servant of the Emperor of Mankind. You claim authority over this system. Provide evidence of your governmental legitimacy within Imperial law." Elena had prepared for this moment, but nothing could have prepared her for the casual way Sicarius dismissed 3 centuries of human achievement. She activated the holographic display, showing him the scope of solar system civilization, the terraforming of Mars, the mining operations throughout the asteroid belt, the thriving colonies on the outer planets, the Ringgate network that connected them to 1,300 other star systems. "Captain Sicarius," she began, "humanity has established a presence in over 1,300 star systems. Our total population exceeds 300 billion souls. We've developed sustainable technology, eliminated poverty and hunger, and created the most successful period of human expansion in our species' history." Sicarius studied the displays with the focused attention of a career military officer, but his response revealed a perspective that chilled Elena to her core. "Your achievements are adequate for an isolated human colony. However, your technological development shows clear signs of heretical innovation. These ring gates you describe represent xenotech integration, which is strictly forbidden under Imperial law. Your genetic diversity indicates unchecked mutation proliferation. Your political structure lacks proper Imperial authority hierarchy." Elena felt a growing sense of horror as she realized the scope of the problem they faced. "Captain, I don't think you understand the scale of what you're looking at. We're not a colony. We're an interstellar civilization. Our technology allows faster-than-light communication, efficient resource distribution across multiple star systems, and life support systems that can maintain billions of people indefinitely. Your technology," Sicarius replied with the patient tone of someone explaining obvious facts to a child, "is built upon xenotech foundations that invite chaos corruption. Your faster-than-light communication relies on alien constructs that expose your population to warp predation. Your life support systems lack proper machine spirit sanctification. Your resource distribution operates without Imperial tithe obligations. The disconnect was becoming painfully clear. These Imperials weren't just technologically advanced. They operated according to a completely different paradigm of existence. Where Elena saw efficient engineering, they saw heretical innovation. Where she saw successful diversity, they saw dangerous mutation. Where she saw freedom and prosperity, they saw chaos and corruption. "Captain," Elena said carefully, "perhaps you could explain your civilization to me. Help me understand what you've built that makes you so confident in your approach." What followed was a revelation that redefined Elena's understanding of what humanity could become and what it could lose in the process. "The Imperium of Man," Sicarius began, "spans 1 million worlds across the galaxy. Our domain encompasses approximately 100 trillion human souls under the protection of the God Emperor of mankind. For 10,000 years, we have held back the forces of chaos, xenotech corruption, and mutant degeneration through absolute adherence to Imperial doctrine." Elena's mind struggled to process the numbers. 1 million worlds, 100 trillion people, 10,000 years of continuous expansion and warfare. If these figures were accurate, humanity from the Expanse wasn't dealing with a simple military force. They were facing a galactic empire that dwarfed their civilization by a factor of 300. "Our technology," Sicarius continued, "is sanctified by 10 millennia of faithful service. Our weapons can crack continents. Our ships can travel through the warp itself, navigating the realm of demons through faith and fury. Our warriors are genetically enhanced beyond baseline human limitations, created from the genetic legacy of the Emperor himself." The tactical implications were staggering. Elena began pulling up comparative analysis on her workstation, cross-referencing Imperial capabilities against solar system defenses. The results were devastating. A single Imperial battle barge carried more firepower than the entire Third Fleet. Their production capacity exceeded the total industrial output of all human colonies combined. Their military personnel outnumbered the entire population of the solar system by orders of magnitude. "Captain Sicarius," Elena said, her voice carefully controlled, "what exactly do you intend to do with our civilization?" The Imperial officer's response was delivered with the matter-of-fact tone of someone discussing routine administrative procedures. Standard compliance protocol for isolated human populations involves genetic screening, technological audit, cultural re-education, and Imperial integration. Populations demonstrating acceptable genetic purity and technological competence can be incorporated as Imperial citizens. Populations showing excessive mutation or chaos corruption require purification and replacement with Imperial settlers. Elena felt the blood drain from her face as she fully grasped what he was saying. "You're talking about genocide, the systematic elimination of entire populations because they don't meet your genetic standards." "I am talking about the survival of the human species," Sicarius corrected. "The galaxy is filled with horrors that would devour your souls and corrupt your flesh if given the opportunity. Chaos demons that feed on human emotion. Alien species that view humanity as nothing more than raw material for their twisted purposes. Ancient machines that seek to convert all organic life into mechanical servants. Only through absolute genetic purity, technological orthodoxy, and unwavering faith can humanity survive in such an environment." The communication board in Elena's conference room suddenly erupted with emergency signals. Admiral Singh's voice cut through the static with barely contained fury. "Captain Vasquez, we've got multiple contacts emerging from ring gates throughout the system. I count at least 50 Imperial vessels, including several that are larger than anything in our database. They're taking positions around every major population center." Elena's workstation automatically connected to the solar system defense network, providing her with real-time tactical information that confirmed her worst fears. The Imperials weren't just making contact, they were conducting a full-scale occupation. Imperial forces were moving to secure Mars, Ganymede, Titan, and every other major population center simultaneously. Captain Sicarius watched her growing realization with what might have been sympathy. "Your Admiral Singh commands an impressive force for an isolated system. However, the Imperial Navy battle group currently establishing control over your colonies represents less than 1% of our total military capacity. Resistance would be inadvisable. The numbers were impossible to argue with. 50 Imperial warships, each one capable of devastating entire worlds, against a solar system fleet that had been designed primarily for patrol duties and anti-piracy operations. The mathematics of destruction were horrifyingly clear. "What are our options?" Elena asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. "Compliance," Sicarius replied immediately. "Your populations will be subject to genetic screening according to Imperial standards. Those demonstrating acceptable purity levels will be relocated to appropriate worlds for re-education and integration. Your technological base will be audited and either sanctified or destroyed, depending on compliance with Imperial doctrine. Your political leadership will be replaced with Imperial governors appointed by Terra." Elena stared at the tactical display showing Imperial forces taking position throughout the solar system, understanding with crystal clarity that everything humanity from the Expanse had built was about to be systematically dismantled. Their democracy would be replaced with theocratic autocracy. Their diversity would be crushed in favor of genetic uniformity. Their technology would be evaluated according to religious criteria rather than scientific merit. But as she watched Admiral Singh's fleet moving to intercept positions despite the impossible odds, Elena realized that surrender wasn't the only option. Humanity from the Expanse had survived the Canterbury incident, the Free Navy Rebellion, and the Ring entities themselves through a combination of ingenuity, determination, and an absolute refusal to accept defeat. "Captain Sicarius," she said, her voice gaining strength as she spoke, "I think you've misunderstood something fundamental about our people. We're not an isolated colony waiting to be absorbed into your empire. We're an independent civilization with our own values, our own achievements, and our own destiny, and we're not going to submit to your compliance protocols without a fight." The Imperial captain's expression didn't change, but something in his posture shifted slightly, a recognition that perhaps this conversation wasn't going to proceed according to standard Imperial expectations. "Captain Vasquez," he said, using her name for the first time, "I would advise you to reconsider that position. The Imperium has absorbed countless human civilizations over the past 10 millennia. Some joined willingly and prospered under Imperial protection. Others chose resistance and were utterly destroyed. The choice is yours, but the outcome is inevitable." Elena looked out at the stars through the conference room's viewing ports, seeing Imperial warships taking position around the colonies that represented 3 centuries of human dreams and achievements. The mathematics were stark, the enemy was overwhelming, and the odds were impossible. But as she prepared her response to Captain Sicarius, Elena couldn't help but remember the words of James Holden, the captain who had helped humanity survive its first encounter with powers beyond their understanding. Sometimes the right thing to do is the only thing to do, even when you know it's going to get you killed. The battle for the soul of humanity from the Expanse was about to begin. Chapter 4. The Ultimate Test. Admiral Chandra Singh stood on the bridge of her flagship, the UNS Behemoth, watching tactical displays that showed the systematic positioning of Imperial forces throughout the solar system. 53 Imperial warships had emerged from various ring gates over the past 6 hours, each one taking position around major population centers with the coordinated precision of a military operation planned decades in advance. The largest of these vessels, a massive construct that dwarfed even the legendary Nauvoo, had positioned itself in Martian orbit. Its weapon signatures alone exceeded the combined firepower of the entire solar defense fleet, and intelligence reports indicated it was merely one of several ship classes in the Imperial arsenal. "Admiral," reported her tactical officer, Commander Sarah Chen, "we're receiving surrender demands from Imperial forces at all colonial positions. They're giving us 12 hours to stand down our fleet and submit to what they're calling compliance processing. If we refuse, they're threatening orbital bombardment of civilian targets. Singh studied the tactical display with the focused intensity that had made her legendary during the Laconian campaigns. The mathematics of the situation were brutally clear. The Solar Defense Fleet comprised 87 ships of various classes, while the Imperial force represented overwhelming technological superiority, with vessels that operated according to physics principles she couldn't entirely comprehend. But Singh had built her career on understanding that mathematical superiority didn't always translate to victory. During the siege of Medina Station, she had defeated Laconian forces despite being outgunned 3-1 through superior tactics and an intimate knowledge of her enemy's weaknesses. The question was whether these Imperials had exploitable vulnerabilities. Chen, what's our intelligence assessment on Imperial ship design and capabilities? Ma'am, the news isn't good, Chen replied, forwarding detailed analysis to Singh's command station. Their vessels appear to use armor materials that our standard weapons can't effectively penetrate. Their energy shields can deflect our plasma bombardment indefinitely. Their propulsion systems allow acceleration profiles that should crush any biological crew, but they seem to operate without concern for normal human physical limitations. Singh nodded grimly, but her attention was caught by something in the technical analysis. Wait. Look at their maneuvering patterns. These ships are massive. Some of them mass 50 times more than our heaviest battleships, but they're moving like orbital fortresses rather than spacecraft. They're powerful, but they're not designed for the kind of high-acceleration combat that defines modern space warfare. The realization sparked a tactical possibility that Singh began exploring with the methodical precision that had made her one of the most respected fleet commanders in human history. The Imperials possessed overwhelming firepower and defensive capabilities, but their ship design seemed optimized for different kinds of warfare than what humanity from the Expanse had developed. Chen, get me detailed acceleration profiles on all Imperial vessels. I want to know their maximum G-force capabilities, their turning radii, and their weapon engagement envelopes, and connect me to Captain Vasquez on Ceres Station. I need to understand exactly what we're dealing with. The communication from Ceres Station arrived with perfect clarity, despite the Imperial jamming efforts that had been interfering with normal traffic. Elena's voice carried the tension of someone who had been conducting the most important negotiation of her career under impossible circumstances. Admiral, I've been in direct contact with Imperial Command Authority. They're not negotiating, they're dictating terms for our complete surrender and assimilation into their empire. But I've learned something important. They're genuinely surprised by the level of organization and technological development they've encountered here. This isn't going according to their normal conquest protocols. Singh absorbed this information while studying tactical projections of Imperial ship movements. Captain, what's their response time been to our fleet movements? How quickly are they adapting to our positioning? Ma'am, that's the interesting thing, Elena replied. They seem to be operating according to predetermined battle plans, rather than adapting in real time to our tactical responses. Their commander, Captain Sicarius, acts like he's following established procedures, rather than responding dynamically to our capabilities. The pattern was beginning to emerge in Singh's mind, a tactical opportunity born from the very superiority that made the Imperials so dangerous. They had become accustomed to overwhelming technological advantage, which meant they might not be prepared for opponents who could think and move faster than their doctrine anticipated. All ships, Singh broadcast on the Fleet Command frequency, prepare for Operation Mongoose. We're going to demonstrate to these Imperials that mathematical superiority isn't the same thing as tactical invincibility. Operation Mongoose was Singh's adaptation of tactics that had proven effective against Laconian forces. High-speed hit-and-run attacks designed to exploit the mobility advantages of smaller, more maneuverable vessels against larger, more powerful opponents. The key was to engage Imperial forces at ranges and acceleration profiles where their superior weapons couldn't be brought to bear effectively. The plan required perfect coordination and timing. The Solar Defense Fleet would split into 3 groups: a primary strike force that would engage the Imperial flagship in Martian orbit, a secondary force that would threaten Imperial positions around Ganymede, and a reserve group that would provide tactical flexibility based on Imperial responses. "Admiral," Chen reported as the fleet began maneuvering into attack positions. "We're receiving communication from the Imperial flagship. They want to discuss our intentions." Singh smiled with the cold satisfaction of a predator that had just identified its prey's weak spot. "Tell them we're demonstrating the tactical capabilities of an independent human civilization. And Chen, make sure all ships are recording everything. If this goes badly, I want the rest of humanity to learn from our mistakes." The engagement began when the UNS Behemoth and her escort squadron achieved attack velocity, approaching the Imperial flagship stationed in Martian orbit. Singh had calculated the engagement envelope precisely, close enough for their weapons to be effective against Imperial shields, but fast enough that Imperial return fire would have difficulty tracking their movement. The initial exchange exceeded even Singh's expectations. The Solar Defense Fleet's plasma bombardment proved capable of depleting Imperial shield systems, forcing the massive enemy vessel to redirect power from weapons to defense. More importantly, the Imperial ship's attempts to return fire confirmed Singh's tactical assessment. Their weapons were designed for devastating effectiveness against stationary targets, but struggled against high-velocity maneuvering opponents. "Ma'am, we're getting results," Chen reported with barely contained excitement. "Imperial flagship is showing shield fluctuations and has reduced their weapon output by 30%. They're having trouble tracking our attack runs." But Singh's satisfaction was short-lived. The Imperial response demonstrated the kind of tactical flexibility that separated professional military forces from amateur resistance movements. Instead of continuing to engage the Solar Defense Fleet in mobile combat, where they were at a disadvantage, the Imperial commander did something that changed the entire nature of the battle. "Admiral." Chen's voice carried a note of horror that Singh had never heard before. "Imperial forces are targeting civilian installations on Ganymede. They're using orbital bombardment against non-military targets." Singh's tactical display confirmed her worst fears. Rather than accepting a conventional military engagement, the Imperials were demonstrating their willingness to inflict mass casualties on civilian populations to force compliance. Massive energy beams were striking Ganymede's agricultural domes, residential districts, and industrial facilities with the methodical precision of an extermination campaign. The mathematical reality was brutal. Singh could continue her attack and potentially damage or destroy several Imperial vessels. But the cost would be measured in millions of civilian deaths as Imperial forces systematically devastated every population center in the solar system. "All ships, break off attack," Singh ordered, the words tasting like ashes in her mouth. "Return to defensive positions around Earth." The communication from the Imperial flagship arrived with the same matter-of-fact tone that had characterized all their interactions. "Admiral Singh, your tactical capabilities are noted and will be included in our compliance assessment. However, continued resistance will result in escalating civilian casualties until full surrender is achieved. You have demonstrated that your fleet possesses military value that can be incorporated into Imperial service. Do not diminish that value through futile resistance." Singh stared at the tactical display showing the devastation on Ganymede. Entire city sections reduced to molten slag, millions of people dead or dying, all to demonstrate Imperial resolve in the face of organized resistance. The message was clear. Military opposition would be met with civilian extermination until compliance was achieved. But as she watched damage reports streaming in from across the solar system, Singh realized that the Imperials had made a critical miscalculation. They had demonstrated their power, but they had also revealed their true nature to every human being in the solar system. This wasn't conquest. It was the systematic destruction of everything that made human civilization worth preserving. "Chen," Singh said quietly, "get me a connection to every fleet commander, every colonial governor, and every resistance leader in the system. It's time for humanity, from the Expanse, to make a choice that will define our species for generations to come." The Imperial demonstration of power had achieved its tactical objective. It had ended organized military resistance, but it had also united humanity from the Expanse around a single, unshakable conviction that submission to Imperial rule was worse than death itself. The real war was just beginning, or was just. Chapter 5. The Turning Point. 3 weeks after the Ganymede massacre, Eleanor found herself in a maintenance tunnel deep beneath Ceres Station, coordinating what had become the most extensive resistance operation in human history. The improvised command center consisted of jury-rigged communication equipment, tactical displays powered by portable fusion cells, and intelligence reports from across the solar system detailing Imperial occupation procedures. The mathematics of resistance were grim. Imperial forces controlled all major population centers, military installations, and transportation hubs. Their compliance processing had already resulted in the execution or deportation of approximately 30 million people classified as genetically impure or politically unreliable. Meanwhile, their re-education programs were systematically dismantling 3 centuries of human cultural achievement, replacing democratic institutions with theocratic hierarchies and scientific education with religious indoctrination. But something unexpected was happening throughout the solar system. Instead of breaking human resistance, Imperial brutality was catalyzing a level of unified opposition that exceeded anything seen since the Earth-Mars belt conflicts of the previous century. Colonial populations that had been divided by political differences were now working together with single-minded determination to preserve their civilization's core values. "Elena!" came the whispered voice of Dr. Prax Meng, the agricultural specialist who had become one of the Resistance's key technical coordinators. "We've got confirmation from 17 different colonies. The sabotage campaign is working. Imperial food production facilities are operating at 60% efficiency. Their communication networks are experiencing systematic failures, and their garrison forces are dealing with constant equipment malfunctions." Elena nodded, studying intelligence reports that painted a picture of increasing Imperial frustration with their supposedly conquered territory. The Resistance had learned from 3 centuries of belt warfare, applying techniques developed during conflicts with pirates and corporate security forces to the challenge of fighting a technologically superior occupying army. The key insight had come from Detective Miller, not the original Miller who had died on Eros, but the current security chief who carried the name and the attitude. These Imperials are used to fighting big battles against organized enemies, he had observed during one of their planning sessions. They're not prepared for thousands of small actions conducted by people who know every maintenance tunnel, every life support system, every vulnerable point in the infrastructure they're trying to control. The resistance strategy focused on exploiting the Imperials' dependence on complex supply chains and communication networks. Every food shipment was contaminated with substances that caused digestive distress without being immediately lethal. Every communication relay was sabotaged in ways that created intermittent failures rather than obvious damage. Every piece of Imperial equipment was subjected to microscopic modifications that would cause cumulative system degradation over time. Most importantly, the Resistance was documenting everything. Every Imperial atrocity, every execution, every forced deportation was recorded and transmitted throughout the solar system. The goal wasn't just to resist Imperial rule, it was to preserve the evidence that would justify whatever actions humanity decided to take in response to this invasion. "Elena," Dr. Meng continued, "we've also received intelligence from our contacts in Imperial re-education facilities. The psychological conditioning programs aren't working as effectively as they expected. Apparently, humans from our civilization are demonstrating unusual resistance to the indoctrination techniques that have been successful with other populations." Elena wasn't surprised. 3 centuries of life in space had bred a population that was naturally skeptical of authority, comfortable with technological complexity, and experienced in dealing with existential threats. The independent mindset that had enabled humanity to spread across 1,300 star systems wasn't easily suppressed by religious propaganda and genetic purity doctrine. The communication board crackled to life with an emergency transmission from Admiral Singh, who had established a mobile command center aboard a heavily modified cargo hauler operating in the outer system. "Elena, we've received intelligence that changes everything. One of our deep cover operatives has infiltrated Imperial command structure and transmitted data about their long-term objectives." Elena activated the secure communication protocols, that allowed real-time conversation despite Imperial jamming efforts. "Admiral, what did they learn?" Singh's voice carried a mixture of hope and determination that Elena hadn't heard since before the invasion began. "The Imperials aren't planning permanent occupation of our territory. Their strategic objective is to harvest our population for military service and relocate our technological resources to support what they call the 13th Black Crusade. They're treating this as a recruitment operation rather than a colonial expansion." The implications were staggering. If the Imperials were focused on resource extraction rather than permanent control, it meant they had specific timelines and logistical constraints that could be exploited. It also meant that their occupation force represented a finite commitment rather than unlimited Imperial attention. "Admiral, what's the timeline for their resource extraction?" "According to our intelligence, they're planning to complete population processing within 6 months and begin major resource transfers within a year. After that, they'll leave this system under minimal Imperial governance and move on to their next target." Elena felt a surge of strategic possibility that transformed her understanding of the Resistance's objectives. They didn't need to defeat the Imperials militarily. They needed to make the occupation so costly and time-consuming that Imperial command would decide the resource extraction wasn't worth the effort. "Dr. Meng," Elena said, turning to the agricultural specialist who had been listening to the conversation. "How long can we sustain our sabotage operations without depleting our resource base?" "With current stockpiles and manufacturing capacity, approximately 18 months, Meng replied. "But Eleanor, if we're going to make this work, we need to escalate our activities. The Imperials are adapting to our current tactics faster than we anticipated." Eleanor activated the Resistance communication network, connecting directly with cell leaders throughout the solar system. The coordinated response that followed would later be remembered as the moment when humanity from the Expanse chose to fight for its survival regardless of the cost. "All stations," Elena announced. "Operation Prometheus is authorized. Repeat. Operation Prometheus is authorized. All cells proceed to maximum resistance protocols." Operation Prometheus represented the Resistance's most desperate and dangerous strategy. Simultaneous attacks on critical Imperial infrastructure designed to cripple their occupation capabilities and force them to choose between massive reinforcement or strategic withdrawal. The operation began with coordinated strikes against Imperial communication networks throughout the solar system. Resistance teams that had spent weeks infiltrating Imperial facilities activated electromagnetic pulse devices that destroyed sensitive electronics while leaving basic life support systems intact. Within minutes, Imperial command centers were operating with degraded capability and limited coordination between different occupation zones. Simultaneously, Resistance cells began targeting Imperial supply chains with surgical precision. Food production facilities experienced catastrophic contamination that rendered entire stockpiles unusable. Fuel depots suffered mysterious explosions that destroyed material reserves without causing excessive civilian casualties. Transportation networks were sabotaged in ways that would require weeks of repair work to restore full functionality. Most significantly, Resistance technical specialists began exploiting weaknesses they had discovered in Imperial technology. The Imperials' dependence on what they called machine spirits created vulnerabilities that could be exploited by people who understood both computer systems and human psychology. Carefully crafted software viruses began spreading through Imperial networks, disguised as routine maintenance protocols, but designed to introduce cumulative system failures over time. The Imperial response was swift and brutal. Captain Sicarius authorized the execution of 10,000 civilians for each act of sabotage, attempting to break Resistance morale through sheer terror. Imperial forces began conducting random searches and interrogations designed to identify Resistance members and eliminate support networks. But instead of breaking the Resistance, Imperial brutality strengthened human resolve. Every execution created more Resistance recruits. Every atrocity was documented and transmitted throughout the solar system, reinforcing the conviction that Imperial rule represented an existential threat to everything humanity from the Expanse valued. Elena, Admiral Singh reported from her mobile command center. Imperial Command is requesting massive reinforcement from their regional fleet. Our intelligence indicates they're acknowledging that this occupation is requiring significantly more resources than anticipated. Elena smiled with grim satisfaction as she reviewed operational reports from across the solar system. Operation Prometheus was exceeding all expectations. Imperial efficiency had dropped to less than 40% of normal levels. Their resource extraction timeline had been extended from 6 months to at least 18 months. Most importantly, their casualty rates among occupation forces had reached levels that would be difficult to justify to Imperial High Command. "Admiral," Elena replied, "I think it's time to send the Imperials a message they'll understand. Get me a direct communication link with Captain Sicarius. It's time for humanity from the Expanse to make them an offer they can't refuse." The conversation that followed would determine whether 3 centuries of human achievement would survive the encounter with the Imperium of Man, or whether humanity from the Expanse would join the countless civilizations that had been absorbed into Imperial orthodoxy. But as Elena prepared to negotiate with an enemy that measured time in millennia and counted casualties in billions, she couldn't escape the conviction that this moment would define not just the survival of her civilization, but the very meaning of what it meant to be human in a universe far more hostile than anyone had ever imagined. Chapter 6: Consequences and Adaptation. The meeting took place in the observation deck of Ceres Station, a transparent dome that offered an unobstructed view of space and the Imperial battle barge that held position just beyond effective weapons range. Elena sat across from Captain Sicarius at a simple metal table, while Admiral Singh participated through encrypted communication from her mobile command center in the outer system. The past month of resistance operations had transformed the dynamic between human and Imperial forces in ways that neither side had anticipated. Elena could see the signs of strain in Sicarius's bearing, the slight tension around his eyes that suggested someone dealing with unexpected complications, the more frequent consultation of data slates that indicated a situation requiring constant tactical adjustment. "Captain Sicarius," Elena began, "I believe it's time for us to discuss terms that acknowledge the reality of our situation." The Imperial officer studied her with the focused attention of a professional soldier evaluating a potential threat. "Captain Vasquez, your resistance operations have been noted and evaluated. While tactically inconsequential in the long term, they have demonstrated organizational capabilities that exceed our initial assessment of your civilization's military potential." Elena nodded, understanding that this acknowledgement represented a significant shift from Imperial initial assumptions. "Our resistance has cost your forces approximately 40% operational efficiency, extended your resource extraction timeline by over 100%, and required reinforcement requests that presumably weren't anticipated in your original strategic planning." "Correct," Sicarius confirmed with the matter-of-fact tone that characterized all his communications. "However, Imperial doctrine provides clear guidance for dealing with persistent resistance movements. We can simply increase the severity of our compliance enforcement until opposition becomes unsustainable." Elena had prepared for this response. "Captain, your current compliance enforcement protocols have already resulted in approximately 50 million civilian casualties. Escalating to the level necessary to break our resistance would require the elimination of approximately 200 million additional people. Is that level of population reduction compatible with your resource extraction objectives?" For the first time since their initial meeting, Elena saw something that might have been uncertainty cross Sicarius's expression. The Imperial officer consulted his data slate for several moments before responding. Population reduction beyond 75% of baseline levels would compromise strategic objectives for the system. However, Imperial doctrine prioritizes compliance over resource yield when necessary. "Captain," Admiral Singh's voice interjected through the communication system, "I'd like you to consider an alternative that might better serve Imperial interests." Sicarius turned his attention to the communication unit with the professional courtesy he would show to any military officer. "Admiral Singh, you may present your proposal." Singh's voice carried the calm confidence that had made her legendary during the Laconian campaigns. The Imperium's strategic objective in this system is resource extraction to support military operations elsewhere. Our resistance is making that extraction costly and time-consuming. However, we're prepared to offer an alternative that could provide the Imperium with greater long-term strategic value. Explain, Sicarius said simply. Voluntary military alliance, Singh replied. Humanity from the Expanse possesses technological capabilities and tactical expertise that could be valuable to Imperial operations. Our ship designs emphasize speed and maneuverability. Our personnel are experienced in small unit operations and asymmetric warfare. Our industrial base is capable of supporting sustained military operations without requiring extensive Imperial resources. Elena watched Sicarius process this information, seeing the moment when the Imperial officer began to consider possibilities beyond standard conquest protocols. Admiral Singh, the Imperium does not form alliances with inferior civilizations. However, we do incorporate valuable military assets through compliance and integration procedures. With respect, Captain, Elena interjected, our resistance operations have demonstrated that we're not an inferior civilization. We're a different kind of human civilization, one that has developed capabilities that complement rather than duplicate Imperial strengths. Singh's voice continued the tactical argument with precision that Elena admired. Captain Sicarius, consider the strategic mathematics. Standard Imperial occupation of our territory would require permanent garrison forces, administrative personnel, and supply chain maintenance. That represents a significant ongoing resource commitment. Alternatively, a military alliance would provide the Imperium with mobile forces capable of independent operations while requiring minimal Imperial oversight. Sicarius was quiet for several minutes, consulting multiple data slates and apparently communicating with Imperial High Command through channels that Eleanor's sensors couldn't monitor. When he finally responded, his words carried the weight of someone who had received authorization to explore options beyond standard doctrine. Captain Vasquez, Admiral Singh, the Imperium has encountered this situation precisely 7 times in the past millennium. Isolated human populations that demonstrated military capabilities sufficient to make occupation costs exceed strategic benefits. In 6 of those cases, the populations were eliminated through orbital bombardment and replaced with loyal Imperial settlers. In one case, the population was granted autonomous status within Imperial space, subject to specific conditions. Elena felt her heart rate accelerate as she realized they might have found a path to survival. What conditions? Military service obligations equivalent to Imperial Guard regiments. Technological sharing agreements that provide the Imperium with access to useful innovations. Political restructuring that eliminates democratic institutions incompatible with Imperial authority. Genetic screening programs that prevent mutation proliferation. Religious re-education that establishes proper Emperor worship. Elena exchanged glances with the communication unit that connected her to Admiral Singh, understanding that they had reached the moment of ultimate decision. The terms Sicarius was offering represented a compromise that would preserve the core of their civilization while requiring fundamental changes to their political and social structure. Captain Sicarius, Elena said carefully, some of those conditions are acceptable to us, while others would require modification to be compatible with our civilization's survival. Specify, Sicarius ordered. Elena had prepared for this moment, consulting with resistance leaders, colonial governors, and military commanders throughout the solar system. Military service obligations are acceptable, provided our forces operate as allied units rather than integrated Imperial Guard formations. Technological sharing is acceptable, provided the exchange is bilateral rather than one-directional. Political restructuring is acceptable, provided we retain local autonomy over internal affairs. Genetic screening is unacceptable. Our genetic diversity is fundamental to our civilization's identity. Religious re-education is unacceptable. We're prepared to acknowledge Imperial authority without abandoning our existing spiritual traditions. Sicarius processed this response with the methodical precision of someone working through complex strategic calculations. Captain Vasquez, your proposal contains elements that are compatible with Imperial precedent, and elements that represent significant departures from standard protocol. I will need to consult with regional command authority. The communication from Admiral Singh carried a note of cautious optimism. Elena, regardless of the Imperial response, we've demonstrated something important here. We've forced an empire that measures time in millennia to acknowledge that humanity from the Expanse represents something they haven't encountered before. Elena nodded, understanding the psychological victory they had achieved, even if the negotiations ultimately failed. The resistance operations had proven that technological superiority didn't guarantee easy conquest. The diplomatic discussions had forced Imperial command to consider alternatives to standard occupation procedures. Most importantly, they had maintained their civilization's core values under impossible pressure. Captain Sicarius, Elena said, while you're consulting with your command authority, I'd like to share something with you that might influence their decision-making. The Imperial officer gestured for her to continue. The Imperium has survived for 10,000 years by adapting to new threats and incorporating useful capabilities from the civilizations it encounters. Humanity from the Expanse represents a branch of human evolution that has developed solutions to problems the Imperium hasn't faced yet. Our experience with alien technology, our success in managing genetic diversity, our efficiency in resource utilization, these aren't just different approaches to familiar challenges. They're innovations that could strengthen the Imperium's capabilities in areas where traditional Imperial doctrine has limitations. Sicarius studied her with renewed attention, and Elena realized she had touched on something fundamental to Imperial strategic thinking. Explain your assessment of Imperial limitations. Elena took a deep breath, understanding that her next words would either open new possibilities for negotiation or trigger immediate military action. Captain, the Imperium's greatest strength is also its greatest vulnerability. Your absolute adherence to orthodox doctrine provides stability and unity across a million worlds, but it also limits your ability to adapt to unprecedented challenges. Humanity from the Expanse has survived by embracing change and innovation. That's a capability the Imperium could benefit from, particularly if you're facing threats that require solutions outside traditional Imperial approaches. The silence that followed stretched for nearly a minute before Sicarius responded. Captain Vasquez, you have made arguments that require evaluation at levels beyond my authority. However, I will note that your assessment demonstrates strategic thinking capabilities that are unusual for a conquered population. Elena smiled with the satisfaction of someone who had just gained unexpected leverage in an impossible negotiation. Captain Sicarius, perhaps that's because we're not a conquered population. We're a human civilization that's prepared to work with the Imperium as equals in the service of humanity's survival. The response from Imperial Regional Command would determine whether 3 centuries of human achievement survived the encounter with the grim darkness of the 41st millennium. But regardless of the outcome, humanity from the Expanse had proven something that would echo throughout Imperial doctrine for generations to come. Survival wasn't just about superior firepower. It was about the willingness to adapt, evolve, and find new solutions to ancient problems. Chapter 7. Integration and New Reality. 6 months after the initial Imperial contact, Elena stood in the same observation deck where she had negotiated humanity's survival, but everything had changed. The view through the transparent dome now included not just the Imperial battle barge Indomitable, but 3 solar defense fleet vessels operating alongside Imperial escorts in joint patrol formations. The integration hadn't been easy, but it had proven possible in ways that surprised both civilizations. The formal agreement that had emerged from months of complex negotiations was unlike anything in Imperial precedent. The Terran Accord granted humanity from the Expanse autonomous status within Imperial space, while establishing specific obligations and privileges that reflected the unique nature of their civilization. Admiral Singh's voice came through the communication system, with the satisfaction of someone who had achieved the impossible. Elena, I've just received confirmation from Fleet Command. The first joint operations between Solar Defense Forces and Imperial Navy units have exceeded all performance expectations. Our ship designs are proving highly effective in roles that complement traditional Imperial capabilities. Elena nodded, reviewing operational reports that detailed the early results of the integration process. The combination of Imperial firepower and solar system mobility had created tactical capabilities that neither civilization could have achieved independently. Imperial battle barges provided the heavy offensive capacity necessary for major fleet engagements, while solar system destroyers offered the speed and maneuverability required for reconnaissance, pursuit, and rapid response operations. The technological exchange had proven equally beneficial. Imperial engineers had been fascinated by humanity's efficient life support systems, advanced communication networks, and sophisticated resource management protocols. Meanwhile, solar system scientists had gained access to Imperial knowledge of warp travel, energy weapon technology, and materials science that operated according to principles they were still struggling to understand. Elena, Dr. Meng's voice interrupted her thoughts as he entered the observation deck, carrying data slates filled with agricultural reports. The food production integration is exceeding our projections. Imperial hydroponic techniques, combined with our genetic modification expertise, has increased crop yields by 37% across all colonial facilities. Elena smiled, remembering the debates that had raged throughout the solar system when the Accord negotiations were taking place. Many colonial leaders had argued that any compromise with Imperial authority represented an unacceptable betrayal of democratic principles. Others had insisted that survival required accepting whatever terms the Imperials offered. The final agreement had satisfied neither extreme, while providing a framework that both civilizations could accept. Under the Terran Accord, humanity from the Expanse retained internal autonomy over their existing territory, while accepting Imperial sovereignty for external relations and mutual defense. Colonial governments continued to operate according to democratic principles, but with Imperial observers present to ensure compliance with broader strategic objectives. Most controversially, the Accord established genetic monitoring programs that stopped short of Imperial purity requirements, while providing early warning systems for mutations that might pose genuine health risks. The religious provisions had required the most delicate negotiation. Rather than mandating emperor worship, the Accord acknowledged Imperial religious authority while protecting existing spiritual traditions. Colonial populations were required to learn about Imperial history and theology, but weren't forced to abandon their current beliefs. In practice, this had resulted in a fascinating synthesis that combined Imperial concepts with solar system traditions in ways that enriched both cultures. Captain Sicarius entered the observation deck with the measured stride that had become familiar over months of coordination meetings. His presence no longer carried the implicit threat of immediate violence, but rather the professional respect that developed between military officers who had learned to work together effectively. "Captain Vasquez," Sicarius said, "I have received updated operational assessments from Imperial Regional Command. The Terran Accord is being evaluated as a potential model for integration of other isolated human populations. Your civilization's contributions to Imperial military capabilities have been noted at the highest levels of command authority." Elena felt a surge of satisfaction mixed with apprehension. Success in proving their value to the Imperium was essential for long-term survival, but it also carried the risk of increased Imperial attention and expectations. "Captain Sicarius, what specific contributions have been most valuable to Imperial operations? Your rapid response capabilities have proven essential for dealing with emerging threats that require immediate tactical response," Sicarius replied. Traditional Imperial fleet doctrine prioritizes overwhelming force applied through methodical planning and execution. However, certain threats require speed and adaptability that complement rather than replace heavy assault capabilities. Admiral Singh's voice joined the conversation through the communication system. "Captain Sicarius, our intelligence services have also provided valuable insights into alien technology and behavior patterns. Our experience with the ring gates and the entities that created them has given us knowledge that appears to be relevant to Imperial strategic challenges." Elena understood the implications immediately. Humanity from the Expanse possessed unique experience with technologies and intelligences that operated outside normal Imperial categories. Their survival of contact with the ring builders, their successful integration of alien-derived technology, and their development of defensive protocols against incomprehensible entities represented capabilities that could be valuable to an empire facing threats beyond conventional understanding. "Captain Sicarius," Eleanor said, "I'd like to discuss the next phase of our integration. 6 months of joint operations have demonstrated that our civilizations can work together effectively. Now we need to address long-term strategic objectives that will define our relationship for generations to come." Sicarius consulted his data slate, accessing information that Elena suspected came directly from Imperial High Command. "Captain Vasquez, Imperial strategic planning operates according to timelines measured in centuries rather than decades. However, current galactic conditions require more rapid adaptation than traditional Imperial doctrine anticipates." Eleanor felt a chill of recognition as she realized what Sicarius was implying. "Captain, are you saying that the Imperium is facing threats that exceed your normal strategic parameters? The galaxy is entering a period of unprecedented instability," Sicarius confirmed. "Ancient enemies are awakening, alien species are demonstrating increased aggression, and chaos corruption is spreading at rates that challenge conventional containment protocols. The Imperium requires every advantage to survive what Imperial scholars are calling the time of ending." Admiral Singh's voice carried a note of grim determination that Elena had learned to recognize. "Captain Sicarius, humanity from the Expanse has faced existential threats before. We survived the Ring entities, the Free Navy Rebellion, and first contact with forces beyond our understanding. We're prepared to stand with the Imperium against whatever threats emerge." Elena nodded, understanding that their conversation had just transitioned from negotiating local autonomy to committing to galactic warfare on a scale that dwarfed anything in human experience. "Captain Sicarius, what specific capabilities does the Imperium need from our civilization?" "Strategic flexibility," Sicarius replied immediately. "The ability to develop unconventional solutions to unprecedented problems. Imperial doctrine provides proven methods for dealing with known threats, but emerging challenges require adaptation capabilities that traditional Imperial culture doesn't encourage." Elena exchanged glances with the communication unit that connected her to Admiral Singh, recognizing the moment when their civilization's role in Imperial strategy became clear. Humanity from the Expanse wouldn't just be contributing ships and personnel to Imperial military operations. They would be providing the innovation and adaptability that could determine whether the Imperium survived the coming chaos. "Captain Sicarius," Elena said, "we accept that responsibility, but we'll need assurances that our contributions will be recognized and that our autonomy will be preserved even as we integrate more closely with Imperial operations." "Captain Vasquez," Sicarius replied, "the Terran Accord will be honored as long as your civilization continues to demonstrate strategic value to Imperial survival. However, you should understand that the challenges ahead will test every alliance, every doctrine, and every assumption about what it means to be human in a hostile universe." Elena looked out at the stars through the observation deck's viewing ports, seeing Imperial and solar system ships operating in formations that represented 3 centuries of human achievement, working alongside 10 millennia of Imperial experience. The integration had succeeded beyond anyone's expectations, but it had also committed humanity from the Expanse to a future that would require everything they had learned about survival and adaptation. As she prepared to transmit the next phase of integration protocols to colonial governments throughout the solar system, Elena couldn't escape the conviction that the real test of humanity's survival was just beginning. They had proven they could work with the Imperium, but the universe was about to demand proof that they could help the Imperium face threats that challenged the very foundations of galactic civilization. The mathematics of survival had evolved from protecting 300 billion people to preserving the future of humanity itself across 1 million worlds. And somehow, humanity from the Expanse had become essential to determining whether that future included freedom, diversity, and the innovation that had carried them from a single world to the stars themselves. Chapter 8: Warriors Born and Future Hope. 10 years after first contact, Eleanor stood in the command center of the UNS Perseverance, the first joint construction vessel to combine solar system design philosophy with Imperial technology. The ship represented everything that humanity from the Expanse had learned about survival, adaptation, and the preservation of core values under impossible pressure. The bridge crew around her included personnel from both civilizations. Imperial Navy officers trained in traditional doctrine, working alongside solar system specialists experienced in rapid response operations. The synthesis had taken years to develop, but it had proven more effective than either approach could achieve independently. "Captain," reported Lieutenant Commander Torres, the tactical officer who had begun her career as a belt mining engineer before the Imperial integration transformed career paths throughout the solar system. "Long-range sensors are detecting the expected emergent signatures. The Tyranid Hive fleet will arrive at the Proxima system within 36 hours. Elena nodded, reviewing tactical displays that showed the most advanced military cooperation in human history. The joint task force included 12 Imperial battle barges, 30 solar system destroyers, and support vessels from both civilizations operating under unified command protocols that had been refined through a decade of joint operations. The Tyranid threat represented exactly the kind of challenge that required capabilities from both civilizations. The alien hive mind controlled biological ships that could adapt to conventional Imperial tactics, requiring the speed and flexibility that solar system forces provided. Meanwhile, the sheer scale of the alien fleet demanded the firepower and durability that only Imperial vessels could deliver. Admiral Singh's voice came through the communication system from her flagship, the recently commissioned UNS Determination. "Elena, I'm receiving final confirmation from Imperial Fleet Command. This operation has been designated as the proof of concept for expanded joint operations. If we can demonstrate effective cooperation against a major Tyranid incursion, the Terran Accord will be extended to include other human populations throughout the galaxy." Elena felt the weight of responsibility that had defined her life since that first morning on Ceres Station, when everything had changed. The decision they had made to resist Imperial occupation had evolved into something none of them could have anticipated: leadership in the development of new strategies for human survival in a universe that seemed determined to eliminate their species entirely. Captain Sicarius appeared on the main display, transmitting from the Imperial battle barge Invictus. The decade of joint operations had transformed their relationship from adversaries to trusted allies, but his expression carried the same focused intensity that had characterized their first meeting. "Captain Vasquez," Sicarius said, "Tyranid bioships are demonstrating adaptation patterns that exceed previous Imperial encounters. Standard Imperial doctrine would require fleet sizes approximately 3 times our current strength to achieve acceptable victory probabilities. However, tactical simulations suggest that joint operations protocols may provide capabilities sufficient to overcome the numerical disadvantage." Elena smiled with the satisfaction of someone whose civilization had proven its strategic value through practical results. The integration process had been difficult, requiring compromises from both cultures that had sometimes challenged fundamental assumptions about identity and values. But the outcome had exceeded everyone's expectations. Solar system personnel had learned to appreciate Imperial discipline, technological sophistication, and the kind of long-term strategic thinking that enabled survival across millennia. Meanwhile, Imperial forces had discovered the value of tactical flexibility, rapid innovation, and the willingness to challenge orthodox approaches when facing unprecedented threats. Most importantly, both civilizations had discovered that their different approaches to being human were complementary rather than contradictory. Imperial emphasis on duty, honor, and sacrifice provided the stability necessary for long-term survival. Solar system emphasis on freedom, diversity, and adaptation provided the innovation necessary to overcome new challenges. "Admiral Singh, Captain Sicarius," Elena announced, "Joint Task Force is ready to demonstrate what humanity can accomplish when we combine the best of our different traditions. Commencing approach to combat zone." The Tyranid hive fleet that emerged from the warp at the edge of the Proxima system was unlike anything Elena had encountered in 2 decades of military service. Hundreds of bioships ranging in size from escort vessels to massive hive motherships moved with the coordinated precision of a single organism. Their organic hulls shifted and adapted in real time. responding to scanning attempts and tactical analysis, with evolutionary changes that made conventional targeting extremely difficult. The battle that followed would become legendary in both Imperial and Solar System military academies, studied as the perfect example of how different human traditions could complement each other in the face of existential threats. Imperial battle barges provided the anvil against which the Tyranid forces would be broken, their massive firepower and void shields creating a stable foundation for the entire tactical plan. Meanwhile, Solar System destroyers operated as the hammer, using their superior speed and maneuverability to exploit the gaps and weaknesses that Imperial firepower created in the alien formation. Elena watched the tactical displays with pride as human ingenuity proved superior to alien adaptation. When Tyranid bioships began evolving defenses against Imperial energy weapons, Solar System forces switched to kinetic bombardment that the aliens couldn't easily counter. When the hive mind attempted to overwhelm Imperial positions through numerical superiority, Solar System ships provided rapid response capabilities that prevented breakthrough attempts. "Captain," Torres reported, "Tyranid adaptation rate is decreasing as their hive mind struggles to process the tactical complexity of our joint operations. They're demonstrating confusion when attempting to counter strategies that combine Imperial and Solar System approaches." Elena nodded, understanding that they were witnessing something historically significant. The Tyranid hive mind represented one of the most dangerous threats in the galaxy precisely because it could adapt to any single strategic approach. However, the combination of Imperial orthodoxy and Solar System innovation was creating tactical complexity that even the alien superorganism couldn't easily process. The final phase of the battle demonstrated the full potential of human cooperation. As Tyranid forces began their inevitable retreat, Imperial and Solar System ships operated in perfect coordination to ensure maximum damage to the hive fleet while minimizing casualties among human forces. The pursuit phase required precision timing and communication that would have been impossible without a decade of integration and training. When the last Tyranid vessel was destroyed or driven from the system, Elena allowed herself a moment of satisfaction that went beyond simple military victory. They had proven that humanity from the Expanse could not only survive contact with the Imperium, but could contribute to Imperial capabilities in ways that strengthened human civilization throughout the galaxy. "Admiral Singh, Captain Sicarius," Elena announced. "Mission accomplished. Tyranid threat has been eliminated with minimal casualties to joint forces. Integration protocols have proven effective under combat conditions." The response from Admiral Singh carried the satisfaction of someone who had spent her entire career preparing for exactly this kind of challenge. "Elena, I'm receiving congratulations from Fleet Command throughout both civilizations. This victory will be remembered as the moment when humanity proved that cooperation is stronger than conquest." Captain Sicarius's response reflected the evolution that had occurred in Imperial thinking during the decade of integration. "Captain Vasquez, this operation has demonstrated capabilities that will be essential for Imperial survival during the challenges ahead. The Terran Accord has proven that different human traditions can strengthen rather than threaten Imperial unity." Elena looked around the bridge at crew members who represented the best of both civilizations. Imperial officers who had learned to value innovation and flexibility. Solar System personnel who had embraced discipline and long-term thinking. And a new generation that had grown up understanding that human survival required the preservation of diverse approaches to common challenges. As the joint task force began the journey back to Solar System space, Elena couldn't help but reflect on the journey that had brought them to this point. The morning she had received that first contact report on Ceres Station seemed like a lifetime ago, but the principles that had guided their response remained unchanged. The conviction that human civilization was worth preserving, the determination to find solutions to impossible problems, and the faith that cooperation could overcome any challenge. The communication from Earth arrived just as they entered the outer system, transmitted through the quantum entanglement networks that now connected Solar System space with Imperial communication arrays throughout the galaxy. The message was from the Colonial Assembly, but it carried endorsements from Imperial Regional Command and local governors throughout human space. Captain Vasquez, the transmission began. The success of the Proxima operation has been noted at the highest levels of both Imperial and Solar System governance. The Terran Accord is being expanded to include authority for joint operations throughout this galactic sector. You are hereby promoted to Admiral and assigned command of the new Joint Strategic Response Command. Elena smiled, understanding that her personal journey from System Administrator to Fleet Admiral reflected the larger transformation that had occurred throughout human civilization. The challenges ahead would be greater than anything they had faced so far, but humanity had proven that survival and growth were possible even under impossible pressure. As she prepared to transmit acceptance of her new command authority, Elena looked out at the stars and saw not the grim darkness of an uncaring universe, but the infinite possibilities that opened when different branches of humanity chose cooperation over conflict. The mathematics of survival had evolved from protecting individual colonies to preserving the diversity and innovation that made human civilization worth preserving across a galaxy filled with threats. And somehow, against all expectations, humanity from the Expanse had not only survived contact with the Imperium of Man, but had helped create something new, a synthesis of traditions that was stronger than either could achieve alone. The future would bring challenges that would test every assumption about what it meant to be human in a hostile universe. But Eleanor was confident that humanity, in all its diverse forms, would find a way to survive, adapt, and thrive among the stars they had claimed as their birthright. The war for the future of human civilization had been won not through conquest, but through the recognition that different approaches to being human were valuable precisely because they were different. And in that recognition lay the foundation for a future that honored both the ancient dreams of Earth and the infinite possibilities of the stars themselves. 25 years after first contact, Commander Sarah Chen Aurelius stood in the observation deck of the Imperial solar hybrid vessel Belter's Pride, watching her mixed crew conduct training exercises that would have been impossible to imagine during her grandmother's generation. Her surname carried the weight of two civilizations, Chen from her solar system heritage, Aurelius adopted in honor of the ultramarine sergeant who had become humanity's unlikely ally during the integration period. Sarah represented something entirely new in human history, the first generation to grow up truly bilingual in Imperial Gothic and Belt Cant, equally comfortable with machine spirit rituals and quantum communication protocols, trained in both democratic decision-making and Imperial chain of command. Her crew of 200 included third-generation Belters who could recite the Imperial Creed from memory, and Imperial Navy veterans who had learned to appreciate the elegant efficiency of solar system engineering. Commander, reported Chief Petty Officer Martinez, a former Martian Marine whose family had emigrated to serve in the Imperial Guard, but had chosen to remain in the Joint Forces. Long-range astropaths are detecting unusual warp disturbances in the Tau border regions. Fleet Command is requesting our task group for deep reconnaissance. Sarah nodded, studying tactical displays that seamlessly integrated Imperial auger arrays with solar system sensor networks. The hybrid technology had proven more effective than either system alone, capable of detecting threats that traditional Imperial doctrine might miss while providing the spiritual protection that warp travel required. The mission request represented exactly the kind of operation that the Terran Accord forces had become legendary for. Independent reconnaissance in dangerous regions where Imperial battle groups would be too visible, and solar system forces alone would lack sufficient firepower. Over the past quarter century, they had become the Imperium's preferred solution for threats that required both military capability and tactical flexibility. Martinez, prep the crew for extended warp travel, Sarah ordered, activating communication protocols that would connect her directly with Joint Strategic Command on Luna. And get me a briefing on current Tau expansion patterns. If they're pushing into Imperial space again, we need to understand their strategic objectives. The response came from Admiral Elena Vasquez, now Fleet Admiral Vasquez, commander of Joint Strategic Forces and the architect of the integration that had saved humanity from the Expanse from absorption into standard Imperial hierarchy. Even after 25 years, her voice carried the authority of someone who had successfully negotiated humanity's survival under impossible circumstances. Sarah, Eleanor said, using the informal communication style that had become standard in joint forces. The Tau situation is more complex than standard xenotech expansion. Our intelligence suggests they're developing new technologies that could threaten Imperial warp travel capabilities. We need eyes on their forward positions to assess whether this represents a regional threat or something that could affect Imperial operations throughout the sector. Sarah absorbed this information while reviewing tactical data that painted a disturbing picture of Tau advancement. The alien species had always been technologically sophisticated, but recent intelligence suggested they were developing capabilities that could fundamentally alter the balance of power in their region of the galaxy. "Admiral," Sarah replied, "our task group can provide the reconnaissance data you need, but if the Tau are developing anti-warp technology, we'll need more than standard engagement protocols. This could require the kind of adaptive tactics that challenge both Imperial and solar system doctrine." Eleanor's response carried the satisfaction of someone who had spent decades preparing for exactly these kinds of challenges. "Sarah, that's precisely why we're sending you. Your generation has grown up understanding that survival requires synthesis rather than orthodoxy. You have tools and perspectives that neither civilization could develop alone." As the Belter's pride prepared for warp translation, Sarah reflected on the journey that had brought humanity from the Expanse to this moment. The integration hadn't been easy. It had required fundamental changes in how both civilizations understood identity, authority, and the nature of human potential. But it had also created something unprecedented in either Imperial or solar system history. A branch of humanity that combined the best elements of both traditions while remaining genuinely innovative. The hybrid crews that served aboard joint vessels represented more than simple cultural mixing. They were the product of educational systems that taught Imperial discipline alongside solar system creativity, religious traditions that honored the Emperor while preserving scientific inquiry, and military doctrines that emphasized both duty and adaptability. Most importantly, they had grown up understanding that human survival required the preservation of diversity rather than its elimination. The Imperial tendency toward orthodoxy provided stability and unity, while the solar system emphasis on innovation provided the flexibility necessary to overcome new challenges. Into the unknown, the warp translation that carried Sarah's task group toward the Tau border region proceeded with the smooth efficiency that characterized all joint operations. Imperial navigators guided the ships through the dangerous currents of the warp, while solar system technicians monitored quantum field fluctuations that could indicate the presence of the anti-warp technology they were investigating. The synthesis of capabilities had proven essential for operations in the increasingly dangerous galaxy of the late 41st millennium. Traditional Imperial doctrine struggled with threats that operated outside established parameters, while solar system approaches alone lacked the spiritual protection necessary for deep space operations. The combination provided capabilities that neither civilization could achieve independently. "Commander," reported Lieutenant Kawai, the sensor specialist whose training included both Imperial auger interpretation and solar system quantum analysis. "We're detecting unusual energy signatures in the target system. The patterns don't match any known Tau technology in our databases." Sarah studied the sensor readings with growing concern. The energy signatures showed characteristics that seemed to combine Tau technological principles with something else, possibly technology derived from other alien species or even human innovations that had been adapted for xenotech applications. "Kawai, can you determine if the technology shows any signs of human engineering principles?" "Ma'am, that's the disturbing part," Kawai replied. "Some of these energy patterns are consistent with early solar system experiments in faster-than-light communication. The mathematical foundations look like adaptations of our quantum entanglement protocols." Sarah felt a chill of recognition as she realized the implications. If the Tau had somehow acquired and adapted solar system technology, they could be developing capabilities that would threaten not just Imperial warp travel, but the communication networks that held human civilization together. "Get me a secure communication with Admiral Vasquez," Sarah ordered. "Priority Alpha encryption. The Admiral needs to know that we might be looking at technology theft rather than independent Tau innovation." The communication that followed would reshape strategic planning throughout the Joint Command structure. Elena's voice carried the controlled tension of someone who had just received intelligence that challenged fundamental assumptions about galactic security. Sarah, if the Tau have access to our quantum communication technology, they could potentially interfere with joint operations throughout the sector. More importantly, they might have acquired other solar system innovations that could threaten Imperial strategic capabilities. Sarah understood the broader implications immediately. The integration of solar system humanity into the Imperial framework had been successful precisely because their technological contributions strengthened rather than threatened Imperial dominance. If those same technologies were being used by xenotech species to challenge Imperial authority, it could undermine the entire foundation of the Terran Accord. Admiral, recommend we proceed with the reconnaissance mission but upgrade our security protocols. If we're dealing with compromised human technology, we need to understand the scope of the breach before we can develop appropriate countermeasures. Elena's response reflected the strategic thinking that had made her legendary throughout Joint Command structures. Approved, Sarah, but I want continuous communication throughout your operation. If the situation develops beyond reconnaissance parameters, you're authorized to use whatever measures necessary to prevent technology proliferation. As Sarah's task group approached the Tau forward positions, her crew conducted detailed analysis of the energy signatures they were detecting. The results painted a picture that was both fascinating and terrifying. The Tau hadn't simply stolen solar system technology. They had successfully integrated it with their own innovations to create hybrid systems that exceeded the capabilities of either approach alone. Commander, Chief Martinez reported, tactical analysis suggests the Tau are using modified quantum entanglement principles to create localized warp disruption fields. They can't prevent Imperial ships from using warp travel, but they can force them to drop back into normal space at predetermined locations. Sarah absorbed this information while studying tactical projections that showed the strategic implications of such technology. If the Tau could force Imperial fleets to emerge from warp travel at specific coordinates, they could prepare defensive positions that would neutralize traditional Imperial advantages in fleet warfare. More disturbing still, the hybrid technology suggested that the Tau had developed a sophisticated understanding of both Imperial warp mechanics and solar system quantum physics. This level of technological synthesis indicated either extensive intelligence gathering or direct cooperation with human personnel who understood both systems. Martinez, prep the stealth reconnaissance drones, Sarah ordered. We need detailed intelligence on Tau facility operations. If they're conducting human-Tau technological collaboration, we need to understand the scope and methods involved. The reconnaissance operation that followed provided intelligence that would fundamentally alter Imperial strategic planning for the next century. The Tau weren't just adapting stolen human technology, they were conducting joint research operations with human personnel who had chosen to defect from both Imperial and solar system civilizations. The defector's choice. The human facility that Sarah's drones discovered in the heart of Tau space was unlike anything in Imperial or solar system databases. The architecture combined Tau technological aesthetics with human engineering principles, creating structures that seemed to blend organic efficiency with mechanical precision. More disturbing still, the energy signatures indicated research operations that exceeded anything either civilization was conducting independently. Commander, Lieutenant Kawai reported, I'm detecting approximately 2,000 human personnel operating within Tau facilities. Their communication patterns suggest voluntary cooperation rather than coercion or indoctrination. Sarah stared at the intelligence displays, struggling to process the implications of organized human defection to xenotech civilization. Throughout the integration period, both Imperial and solar system authorities had assumed that human loyalty could be maintained through appropriate combinations of discipline and opportunity. The discovery of voluntary technological collaboration with alien species challenged fundamental assumptions about human nature and political allegiance. Kawai, can you identify the origin of the human personnel? Are they Imperial citizens, solar system colonists, or mixed populations? Ma'am, that's what makes this so disturbing, Kawai replied. Communication analysis suggests approximately 40% Imperial origin, 30% solar system origin, and 30% from populations we can't identify. They appear to represent voluntary defection from across human space. Sarah understood that they had discovered something that threatened the entire foundation of human civilization in the 41st millennium. If significant populations were choosing alien cooperation over human loyalty, it suggested fundamental failures in both Imperial and solar system approaches to governance and social organization. The communication from one of the human facilities provided answers that were even more disturbing than the questions they had raised. The transmission was in perfect English, delivered by someone who clearly understood both Imperial and solar system communication protocols. "Unknown reconnaissance vessel," the transmission began. "This is Dr. Elizabeth Warren, Director of the Human Tau Cooperative Research Initiative. Your presence has been detected and analyzed. We invite you to discuss possibilities for peaceful technological exchange rather than conducting military intelligence gathering." Sarah felt her blood run cold as she realized they were dealing with organized defection rather than simple xenotech collaboration. Dr. Warren spoke with the authority of someone who believed she represented a legitimate alternative to both Imperial and solar system civilization. "Dr. Warren," Sarah replied through encrypted communication channels, "this is Commander Sarah Chen Aurelius, Terran Accord Joint Strategic Forces. You are operating in violation of both Imperial sovereignty and solar system territorial agreements. State your intentions and legal authority for your activities." The response came back immediately, suggesting that Dr. Warren had been prepared for this conversation. "Commander Chen Aurelius, we operate under the authority of human conscience and the principle that technological advancement should serve human welfare rather than political orthodoxy. The Tau offer cooperation based on mutual benefit rather than the domination that characterizes both Imperial and solar system expansion." Sarah found herself engaging in the kind of philosophical debate that would have been unthinkable during standard military operations. "Dr. Warren, human civilization has survived 10,000 years of galactic warfare by maintaining unity against alien threats. Your cooperation with xenotech species represents a fundamental betrayal of human survival interests." "Commander," Warren replied, "human civilization has survived by adapting to new circumstances and embracing beneficial innovations regardless of their origin. The artificial distinction between human and alien technology serves political control rather than human advancement. The Tau have offered us partnership based on equality rather than the hierarchical domination that defines both Imperial and solar system social structures." The exchange continued for nearly an hour, providing Sarah with insights into motivations that challenged everything she had learned about human loyalty and civilizational identity. Dr. Warren and her colleagues weren't traitors in the conventional sense. They were idealists who believed that human potential could be better realized through alien cooperation than through traditional human institutions. "Dr. Warren," Sarah finally said, "regardless of your philosophical justifications, your activities represent a direct threat to human security throughout this sector. The technology you're developing with Tau assistance could be used to attack human populations who haven't chosen your path." Warren's response revealed the depth of conviction that had motivated thousands of humans to abandon their civilizations for alien cooperation. "Commander, the technology we're developing is designed to defend against aggression rather than facilitate it. Both Imperial and solar system expansions are based on the assumption that human interests require the subjugation of alien species. We're demonstrating that cooperation can achieve better results than conquest." As Sarah prepared her final response, she realized that this conversation would be transmitted throughout the joint command structure and would influence policy decisions for generations to come. The choice she made here would help determine whether human civilization responded to defection through understanding or punishment. "Dr. Warren," Sarah said, "I can't speak for Imperial or solar system policy regarding your activities. However, I can tell you that both civilizations have demonstrated the ability to adapt and evolve when facing new challenges. Perhaps there's room for discussion about how your innovations could benefit human civilization within existing frameworks, rather than in opposition to them." The silence that followed stretched for several minutes before Warren responded. "Commander Chen Aurelius, that's the most encouraging communication we've received from human authority in over a decade. If your civilizations are genuinely prepared to consider technological cooperation based on merit rather than origin, we would be willing to discuss possibilities. The new paradigm. The intelligence that Sarah's task group brought back to Joint Strategic Command initiated the most significant policy review in Imperial history since the Horus heresy. For the first time in 10 millennia, Imperial authorities were forced to consider whether their fundamental assumptions about human-alien relations required modification in the face of voluntary defection based on ideological conviction rather than chaos corruption. Fleet Admiral Elena Vasquez presided over strategy sessions that included Imperial inquisitors, solar system political leaders, and military commanders from both civilizations. The questions they faced challenged basic principles that had guided human expansion since the Great Crusade: whether human survival required absolute separation from alien influence, whether technological advancement justified cooperation with xenotech species, and whether human civilization could accommodate ideological diversity without fragmenting into competing factions. The Warren situation, Elena announced during the first joint strategy session, represents exactly the kind of challenge that the Terran Accord was designed to address. We have humans who are choosing alien cooperation because they believe their own civilizations are inadequate to their needs. This isn't chaos corruption or xenotech indoctrination. It's political defection based on rational assessment of alternatives. Captain Sicarius, now promoted to Chapter Master and serving as Imperial liaison to Joint Strategic Command, provided the Imperial perspective with the measured authority that had characterized all his interactions over the past quarter century. Fleet Admiral Vasquez. Imperial doctrine regarding xenotech cooperation is unambiguous. Alien influence corrupts human potential and threatens species survival. However, the Warren situation suggests that absolute prohibition may be creating the conditions for the defection we seek to prevent. Elena nodded, understanding that they were approaching a moment of civilizational choice that would define human development for centuries to come. Chapter Master Sicarius. Solar system experience suggests that controlled technological exchange can strengthen rather than weaken human capabilities. Our integration with Imperial knowledge has proven beneficial to both civilizations. The question is whether similar principles could apply to carefully managed alien cooperation. The debate that followed would later be studied as the foundation of what historians called the new paradigm, the recognition that human survival in the increasingly dangerous galaxy of the late 41st millennium required more sophisticated approaches to alien relations than simple conquest or separation. Dr. Prax Meng, now serving as Senior Science Advisor to Joint Strategic Command, presented analysis that provided crucial context for the policy discussions. The Warren Group's technological achievements exceed anything either of our civilizations has accomplished independently. Their research into quantum biological synthesis has produced innovations that could revolutionize everything from life support systems to weapons technology. The question isn't whether their work is valuable, it's whether we can find ways to benefit from it without compromising human security. Elena studied the technical reports while considering political implications that extended far beyond immediate tactical concerns. If the Terran Accord could successfully accommodate limited alien cooperation within broader human civilization, it would represent a fundamental evolution in Imperial doctrine that could strengthen rather than threaten human dominance throughout the galaxy. Dr. Meng, Elena said, what safeguards would be necessary to ensure that alien technological cooperation serves human interests rather than alien manipulation? Meng's response reflected years of experience with both Imperial machine spirit protocols and solar system technological integration. Admiral, the key would be maintaining human authority over research objectives while allowing alien input on technical implementation. The Warren Group's mistake was accepting Tau leadership in determining research priorities. A properly structured program would use alien knowledge to achieve human objectives. Chapter Master Sicarius considered this proposal with the strategic thinking that had made him legendary throughout the Imperial Navy. Dr. Meng, Fleet Admiral Vasquez, such an approach would require modifications to Imperial doctrine that exceed my authority to approve. However, if properly implemented, it could provide capabilities that would strengthen Imperial strategic position against threats that traditional doctrine cannot address effectively. The solution that emerged from months of complex negotiations represented a synthesis of imperial orthodoxy, solar system pragmatism, and the innovations that had made the Terran Accord successful. The new paradigm would establish controlled alien cooperation protocols that maintained human authority while allowing access to beneficial technologies that neither civilization could develop independently. The Warren Accords. 6 months after Sarah's initial contact with the defector settlements, Dr. Elizabeth Warren stood in the conference room aboard the Imperial battle barge Indomitable, participating in negotiations that would determine whether human-alien cooperation could exist within the framework of human civilization rather than in opposition to it. The Warren Accords, as they came to be known, established the first formal protocols for controlled alien technological cooperation in Imperial history. The agreements required human authority over all research objectives, Imperial oversight of security protocols, and solar system expertise in technological integration. In exchange, participating alien species would gain access to human markets and protection under joint strategic command. "Dr. Warren," Elena said as the final documents were prepared for signature, "these accords represent a fundamental evolution in human civilization. Your willingness to work within our frameworks rather than in opposition to them has opened possibilities that could strengthen humanity throughout the galaxy." Warren's response reflected the idealism that had motivated her original defection, tempered by years of practical experience in alien cooperation. Fleet Admiral Vasquez, what we've learned through Tau collaboration is that human potential can be enhanced rather than threatened by exposure to different approaches to common problems. The key is maintaining human values while remaining open to alien innovations. Chapter Master Sicarius provided the Imperial perspective that would ensure broader acceptance throughout the Imperium. "Dr. Warren, your research has demonstrated capabilities that could prove essential for Imperial survival during the challenges ahead. However, success will depend on maintaining absolute human authority over strategic objectives while allowing alien expertise to contribute to technical implementation." The signing of the Warren Accords represented more than simple policy modification. It marked the moment when human civilization acknowledged that survival in the 41st millennium required more sophisticated approaches to alien relations than conquest or isolation. The new paradigm would guide human development for centuries to come, establishing principles that honored both imperial traditions and solar system innovations, while remaining open to beneficial alien cooperation. As Elena watched the ceremony conclude, she reflected on the journey that had brought humanity from the Expanse to this moment of unprecedented possibility. The integration with imperial civilization had preserved their core values while providing access to galactic-scale resources and knowledge. The development of joint strategic capabilities had proven that different human traditions could strengthen rather than threaten each other. Now, the Warren Accords were opening possibilities for controlled alien cooperation that could enhance human capabilities without compromising human authority. The mathematics of survival had evolved from simple resource management to complex balancing of competing interests and opportunities. But somehow, through adaptation, cooperation, and the willingness to challenge orthodox assumptions, humanity had found ways not just to survive, but to thrive in a universe that seemed designed to eliminate their species entirely. The future would bring challenges that would test every assumption about what it meant to be human in a hostile galaxy. But Elena was confident that humanity, in all its diverse forms, had developed the tools necessary not just to survive, but to shape the universe according to human values and aspirations. The integration of imperial strength, solar system innovation, and controlled alien cooperation had created something unprecedented, a synthesis of traditions that honored the past while remaining open to infinite future possibilities. The war for the future of human civilization had been won not through conquest, but through the recognition that survival required synthesis, adaptation, and the courage to embrace beneficial change while preserving essential identity. And in that recognition lay the foundation for a human future among the stars that exceeded even the boldest dreams of either civilization alone.